Okay, so formal, the first thing I want to start with is formal and informal writing. This has to do with word choice and the words that we use. Alright, so formal writing is used for an audience you do not know personally. It is mostly used in academic writings. Formal writing is serious and is more complex than informal writing. Alright. Informal writing is basically spoken conversation, and informal writing may include slang, broken syntax, and other non-standard English. Informal Informal writing takes a personal tone as if you're speaking directly to the reader. What I want to say about informal writing is if we use dialect in our work, that's also informal writing. And I also want to make the point that formal writing is used in academic writings, which means, what I mean by that is, this is the writing we use essentially for school when you have to write projects or expository essays. Those sorts of things use formal writing, right? Even though we know that, say, the reader is our teacher, and I have here that you don't know the person personally, but you still use formal writing in those scenarios. Alright, so next I have the active and passive voice. When we use active voice, the subject performs the verb, and vice versa for the passive voice, which means that the verb performs the subject. And I have examples here. She read the prayer quietly. The verb here being read and the noun here being she. So she read, which means that the subject is performing the verb because the girl is who is reading. So that would be active voice. Example 2, a book was moved by the boy. The subject here being the book. Well, there are two subjects, but the main subject here being the book and the verb being moved. A book was moved by the boy. It did not say that the boy moved the book. So in this case, the verb the subject performs the verb. The verb is performing the role of the subject in a sense, because it was moved by the boy. Alright? It gets a bit confusing, but if you look at more examples, you definitely get it. The last one I have is the children played a game. Children being the subject and played being the verb. So the children played, which means that the children are performing the subject in this case. So then this would be active voice. Alright? Let me see if I could. What about if I said I placed the book on the table? I being the subject, place being the verb, I am performing the subject. Now if I had to change that sentence into the passive voice, so that was active because I was performing the verb, not the subject. If I had to change that into passive voice, I would say the book was placed on the table, I could add on by me. Alright? So that is passive voice. So I hope I was clear there and you understand what I mean. Next I have figurative language. Figurative language, is using a word or phrase beyond its literal definition to achieve a more complex meaning or to strengthen its descriptive effect. Now, I have some examples. He is like a rock, firm and immovable. Why this is figurative language is because he, being the person being the subject, or in this sentence, or being the person, cannot be a rock. We are humans, so we can't say we're like rock, firm and immovable, because we are immovable. Many things could move us, but we're making a comparison between a person and a rock, or making it seem as though a person is like a rock, right? This is figurative language. We don't mean it literally, but we mean it to add to descriptive effect. And you'll really find that these are used in poems. figurative language is mostly using poems and literature. Sorry, not literature, but English lit. That's where you'll find a lot more figurative language. My next example: the colors danced and fluttered through the night sky, bound to nothing. They are the wind. No, this one is all over the place. But you can see what I mean here when I say strengthening its descriptive effect. Now, I just describe colors and I compare them to not only dancing, but I compare them to fluttering, almost like butterflies. I compare them to shining in the night sky. I even compare them to being the wind. And I was just talking about colors. Though this is very, very, very figurative, because you still can't even tell what I'm talking about exactly, this is a really good example of how deep figurative language can go. But the main thing to remember is that you achieve a higher meaning when using figurative language that is not the literal meaning. Alright? So I have here that is denoted by metaphors and similes, which is very, very true. And also, as I said before, it's used mostly in poems. Alright. And then for metaphor, so I'm gonna give you a quick example of the metaphor and similes right now. So a metaphor now is a figure of speech where a word or phrase is applied to an object or action and is not literally applicable. And we do this without the use of like and as, because usually when we use like and as, it becomes a simile. Alright, but there's still a bit of a difference where you can use like or as. I did that because there's a much simpler differentiation between the two. But there are cases, though rare, there are cases where you would use like or as and it still be a metaphor. So you have to pay very close attention to the definition and try to break it down and dissect it for yourself. But I'll try my best. I have some examples after, I think, and I'll try to show you what I mean. So I'm going to say it again. A metaphor is a figure of speech where a word or phrase is applied to an object or action. So a metaphor, we apply it to the object or the action, while a simile just compares them. And usually when we compare them, we use like or as, because like and as are two comparative words. Alright, so I'm going to go to the examples now and see if I can, if you don't understand, if you can now. So, metaphors, my examples of metaphors. The man is an animal on the court. Okay? The man is an animal on the court. I'm comparing the man to an animal. But at the same time, I did not use the word like and as, which would have then therefore be comparative words and actually be a comparison. Instead of saying he's like an animal, even though I compared him to an animal, I said that he is one. So I applied the traits of an animal directly to the man, maybe because of his tenacity on the court or what have you. Alright? For the second one, I want to be your rock. Again, you can say as a comparison, but at the same time, I am saying that I want to be a rock. I'm making myself a rock rather than comparing myself to a rock. Because we know what are the, you can say, characteristics of a rock. So saying I'm like a rock is giving myself those characteristics, that I want to be sturdy, firm, immovable. Alluding to what I was said before in the previous example. So when you're actually saying that the object, or applying it directly to the object or the action, this is where a metaphor, that's really what a metaphor is. So next one, he is a rolling stone, always on the move. I didn't even have to say always on the move, because we know what is the characteristics, or what we're saying when we say a rolling stone. So I already said that he is a rolling stone. I applied it directly. And last one, because I think I just repeated myself and you get it now, is the city sings at night. So I'm saying the city is doing something that is maybe not literal, but I'm saying the city sings at night. I'm applying it directly. And in contrast now, we have the, oh, that's the last one. Do I not have, oh right, I didn't even see it change. In contrast now, we have examples of the simile. So for the simile, the man is as strong as an ox. I use as, That's my first tell to let me know if this is a metaphor or if it is a simile. That's my first tell. Now I have to make sure that is a comparison. I'm comparing him to a characteristic instead of saying that he possesses that characteristic. Okay? So the man is as strong as the ox. So I talked about the characteristics from the ox, which is being strong, and then compared it to the man instead of saying the man has that characteristic. Okay? Or saying that the man is an ox because he has a characteristic of it. Next example, he is like a monster on the court. See, this is quite similar to the one I had before, which was he is like an animal. I say, he is like a monster, but see, I use the word like. Again, this is my first tell to know whether I'm dealing with a simile or a metaphor. So I'm comparing him to the characteristics of what we know a monster to be. Same thing with the next example. The city lit up like a lamp. We know that a lamp provides the light, so you could say it's lit. And there you see that I'm comparing and not saying that something is something else, or not applying it directly. And last example, the bookshelf fell like an avalanche. Again, comparing the bookshelf. This is an action now instead of an actual thing, because I'm comparing the action of falling to not only the bookshelf but to avalanche. So this is very comparing action rather than a thing. So I think that was a little different because all of the other ones were actual things and not actions. Alright, so now we move on to word order. So I think the things to cover today were going to be, I started with word choice, and now I'm going to talk about the things that make up word order. So those are the things that made up your word choice. All of those things I mentioned. Figurative language, the metaphors, the similes, etc., etc. Now I'm going to talk about word order. So, in word order I have sentence functions. Remember, this is just an introduction to basic English. You can get into deeper stuff later as time passes on. So, sentence functions. A declaration, or statement. So sentence have functions, and this is one of them. Statement, some sentences are statements, or you can call them a declaration. Alright? So wood is used to build houses and make tools. I did not answer the question, because as you can see a question next one. I did not exclaim or made an exclamation. I just stated something. So declaration or statement, literally stated something. I said that wood is used to build houses and make tools. Usually these sentences are facts, and usually it is almost like language we would have with somebody else when we're just saying something to them. Okay? And obviously you know what a question is. What is your name? How are you doing? Etc., etc. That's a question. Next function that sentences have, an exclamatory sentence or an exclamation. So, help. Why did they put this in here? Help. The killer is escaping. I think that was a TikTok. But point is, this is an exclamation. The person is exclaiming, help. The killer is escaping. So usually there's urgency in language. Whenever the function of this sentence is to show the reader that there's urgency in what the I guess character and story or what have you is experiencing or saying. So I really should put more energy into it. Help! The killer is escaping. So usually when you read it, that's the way the writer wants you to read it in your head to get the full emotion of it or what have you. So last one, an imperative or directive. This is one that is not very common and you don't hear about too often, but it's an actual type of sentence. So an imperative or directive. Eat at least 3 meals a day. When you think directive, you think directions. When you think directions, you think order. So that's how the line of thinking one you have when you think imperative or directive. So if you ever hear what imperative or directive speech, think directive means order. Think order or think instructions. So eat at least 3 meals a day. Usually directives will be found in no, I don't want to say that because that will confuse you. So yeah, just remember that is where you can find a lot of directive or imperative speeches in let's say a cookbook, because they direct you, say step 1 is to do this, step 2 is to do this. That is where directive speech is mostly found. right? Or imperative. So, I talked about sentence functions. Now I want to talk about the different types of sentences. So we have a simple sentence. A simple sentence, this is a sentence made up of a main clause that already makes sense on its own. So as you can see, the first part, and a clause is just like a part of a sentence. You can call it a phrase, but it's a little more than a phrase. So you can see the first part before the equals, I was late. It already makes sense on its own. It already makes sense on its own. I was late. That can almost be a sentence on its own. Alright? So that is an independent clause. So now to make a simple sentence, because usually a simple sentence has in one main clause that already makes sense, and then you just add something to it. That is not another clause, but just a few more words or what have you. So, I was late for school. I was late had already made sense. It was already independent on its own, but I said for school just to give it context. And that is the perfect definition of a simple sentence. Which leads us to compound sentences. Give me 1 second. Right. So, compound sentence. A compound sentence has 2 or more independent clauses. So remember, a simple one had 1, just add on some more words. A compound sentence has 2 or more clauses. And these clauses are often connected using conjunctions. And I'll go to conjunctions in a minute. So, we have independent clause, the same one from before, so I don't mix you up. I was late. We have another independent clause, I got into trouble. Now, if I use a conjunction like and or but, maybe, all those are and etc. There are many more. I'm sure you know a few of them. But the important or mainly used ones are and but, and I use and here as you can see in both. So my compound sentence would be a connection of those 2 clauses that already make sense on their own, already independent clauses. So I was late, independent clause. Use the conjunction and connect it to I got into trouble. So I was late and I got into trouble is now a compound sentence. Alright? So you should be able to differentiate between the 2 whenever you see them. I really need to speed up a little here, so bear with me, because the pen is running thin. Where am I? So, the next thing I want to move on to is subject and verb agreement. I'm sure you know of this, but you may still learn something here. Alright? So the verb of a sentence must agree with its subject, and there are 2 factors that go into subject and verb agreement. And you're going to go through them, you're going to see the 2 factors. So, example, the student, which is the subject, learns, which is the verb, and as you can see, student is singular and learns is the plural, the singular verb. So, subject and verb agreement means that the subject will be singular. That means, if the subject is singular, the verb is going to be singular. And if the subject is plural, the verb will be plural. Alright? So, student being the singular object, said that, and learns being the singular verb to match. Good. So, my next example, my brother and I run. Because my brother and I is more than 1. Even though brother is singular and I is singular, you add them together, that will become a plural subject, meaning I have a plural verb, when. So my brother being the singular, I said being singular because I copied and pasted. That's supposed to be plural subject, and run being plural to match, plural verb to match. I'll fix that before I post the slides. Actually, I'll fix it right after. Okay, so the next thing, and this is the next factor, pronouns. Pronouns are used to avoid repetition. And here's a list of pronouns. You can look at them while I go through the rest of the slides. Don't have much time. Subject and verb agreement is not only about matching a singular subject to a singular verb or vice versa. It is also about making sure the pronouns match as well. And this is not very often talked about, and that's why I wanted to add it in here. So, after Marcus being the subject, ate, he fell asleep soundly. So you can see Marcus is the subject and the pronoun there is he. And that's because Marcus is a boy. So you can say after Marcus ate, she fell asleep. Although if the girl name is Marcus, then you can. But traditionally Marcus is a boy, and that means you put he. So if I said my next example, my friends and I went to ride our bikes. We can't say ride we bikes or ride they bikes because the bikes are ours and there are two of us, so we say our. My friends and I, subject, and the pronoun to match, our bikes. Last example, the party ended early, but it was still a blast. Now this is a thing. So a party is a thing, and usually when we refer to things in the pronoun form, we say it. Alright, so the party ended early, but it was still a blast. I can't say, but she was still a blast, and give the party a gender. This is not Spanish. Alright, so I want to move on now to matching tenses, which is also going into subject and verb, not really subject and verb agreement, but to make a sentence make complete sense. So tenses are verbs that let the reader know whether the event happened in the past or present. And they know there's future and such, but they just want to deal with past and present for right now. So actually, well, past and present, simple and continuous. So you can look at some more examples of these on the own if you don't get it right now. But for simple present tense, I run. Okay? Actually, now looking at this, I can fix it though. I can fix it. Anyways, I think it's supposed to have, no, that was past. Runs is plural. Okay, good. Never mind. Sorry, confusing myself. So simple present tense. I have to cut that. Simple present tense. I run. Present continuous. I am running. So I run is in the present, and you say I run. Right? And continuous means I'm doing it right now. I am running. Past simple tense is I ran. So I ran yesterday. Okay, that's past. Happened in the past. Past continuous, I was running yesterday. Putting myself in the present of that moment, but in a continuous manner. I was running yesterday. That's how it would sound. So that's past continuous, past simple, present continuous, and present simple. Another example for the present perfect. Present perfect tense. I have run. Sounds weird, but if you put it in a sentence, it's going to be funny. So I have run is present perfect. Continuous being I have been running. Right? Past perfect I had run, and continuous I had been running. I'm going to implore you to look at other examples to really understand this. It doesn't come just like that. Alright, and if you already understand it, good. That means you're past the basics of English, and we can move on to the solid stuff. If I had to use a different verb, let's say present simple, let's say look, it would be I look. Present continuous, I am looking. Present simple, I looked. Present continuous would still be I was looking. Alright, good. Well, sorry, past continuous, I was looking. One other time. How much slides do I have left? A few more. Okay, I'll move on. I implore you to look at more of the present, past, and continuous, and present perfect, etc. And looking at examples will really help. So this is script writing, and I didn't want to put a definition just on the screen. I try to use a little example here, a little graphic that you can look at. And just remember that script writing and everything, script writing, think plays, where instead of saying or showing empathy in the sentence and using the like say metaphors or simile, instead of doing that, script writing actually says what happens after. If it's showing empathy, or I would say John said I am sorry, his face full of empathy. Instead, if we had to put that in a sentence to make it not script writing, it would be something like John said he was sorry empathetically, right? They also tell you of other events that are happening in script writing. So example, the first line here we have Jade, she said watch out, and then we say Joe falls downwards. Okay, if I was just writing this straight out normally, I would say watch out, said Jade, and then with a bang Joe fell to the ground. That would be normal. But script writing, they give you a little details of everything going around in the background, and even the mental word not coming to me, mental state of the characters. Okay? Let's look at the example and see what it said. I will post these slides as well. So we'll move on now quickly to direct speech and reported speech. Direct speech is often seen in narrative books and writing. If you know anything about aesthetic reading, which is reading for pleasure, you would know that that is what narrative usually refers to. So any books that you're reading, you always see in books that it said, so you always see in books that you would say somebody said something, it would be quoted, and then they would say he said or Joe said, just so you know who's talking. That is narrative or direct speech. In direct speech, it is usually a quote of what the person said. And I have the example here. I have a dream, said Martin Luther King. So if I was reading that in a narrative book, that's exactly how it would be. I would quote what the person said and then said who said it by using the word said. Also, example I have here, watch out, warn the passerby. So again, I said it. I quoted what the passerby said and then said it was said by the passerby. But I didn't use said in this case. I just say warned. Right? So it would usually be exclaimed. So you know what tense it, not what tense, what manner it is in. So, for example, this one could have been watched out, and instead of warned, it could have been exclaimed the passerby, because then that gives you a sense of urgency from the passerby, right? Actually, really should have put it as exclaimed, because I put an exclamation mark. Warned, I wouldn't have put the exclamation. I shouldn't have put an exclamation mark for just warned, right? So that's again how you make things agree in a sentence. Moving on though, reported speech. So reported speech is similar but slightly different to direct speech, and my example should be perfect to let you understand. So remember the first example where he quoted and said, I have a dream, said Martin Luther King. In reported speech, the way I say that is, in a speech to the masses, Martin Luther King Jr. told them that he had a dream. So instead of quoting what the person said, I go the roundabout method and say what they said, how they said it, and when they said it, and I give you a full overview. That way I don't have to quote the actual person. I wanted to say that reporters tend to do this, but that reporter, they're saying something, and that's literally what is named reported speech, but they still do use direct speeches, rather they would quote somebody from an interview or what have you. But you notice it when a reporter is talking about events that happen, and instead of quoting what the person said, they would say something like very much like the example. So if, say, a reporter was doing a press review or whatever have you about Martin Luther King's speech, the reporter would word it this way rather than saying, I have a dream, said Martin Luther King. You don't usually say direct speech. You usually read direct speech. So reported speech is usually said. Alright? So in a speech to the masses, Martin Luther King Jr. told them he had a dream. That's more than likely what a reporter would say, rather than, I have a dream, said Martin Luther King. Alright? Last part, sentence structures and linking words. This is supposed to be here. Right. Actually, no, this is supposed to be here. I'm missing a slide. I don't know, maybe I accidentally deleted the slide, but I'll tell you what's supposed to be here, because I do remember. So the last part is sentence structure and linking words. Now, we covered most of sentence structure so far, so I won't go into that. I just want to cover the linking words. Oh no, this slide was just supposed to be back here before I did conjunctions, because linking words were the, maybe I wanted to give examples. I'm not sure. I'd have to, I can't remember the keyboard cut this. I can't remember the keyboard option to bring back, like a deleted slide or what have, or put it back in the right order. There's a shortcut for it. Anyways, point is, remember the linking words are just conjunctions. Wait, hold on, I have notes. Let me check them. Because I was just really going off the dome here. What was the last thing I did? No, I think I put that in and then I didn't think that I needed to say anything on it because I already covered it. Okay, so I do have it crossed in my notes, which means I can just don't worry about this slide. So that brings us to the end, to our say summary. So summary of what we did eventually, we went through word choice, And remember that word choice is, you know, choosing the correct language to use, whether it be active, passive voice, indirect, or indirect, or the other one. Oh gosh, I can't remember. You know, indirect speech. We also have word order, how distinct instruction, and subject and verb agreement. I also have paragraphing in here. That was what we would have gone through last class. If you watch the recording, you see that. Punctuation, I also went through that. Purpose and audience, is also what we went through in Unit 1. So this would be the summary of the 5 major headings in Unit 1.